Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Habayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah, and we are up to Daf Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, 13 lines down from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as Chud Rufah Shel Imam for Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, for Nisim Ben Miriam, and for Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should all have full recovery. Rufah Shel Imam Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. Today's Amud is also being learned as is Aliyat Neshama for my grandfather, Avraham Ben Ezra, who's your turn. Different levels of when it is kasher and when it's not, when you're sleeping inside another cover under the sukkah. We spoke about when you have set structures of a canopy in the sukkah which has 4 poles. We spoke about which is a regular kila. We spoke about kilat chatanim, which is the ikad de amri in Shmuel. And we set it up in 4 different levels of when it is kasher and when it's not. Now the Gemara is going to throw in a concept that seems to go against everything that we have said. Darash, Rabba Bar Huna said, Mutar lishan bekilam, afal pi sheyesh la gag, ve'afal pi shkvoha asara. Says you could sleep in a kila even if you have all of the things going wrong. You have 4 poles, and it is taller than asarat tfachim. What we have said so far is that you can't have 4 poles, even if it's less than 10 tfachim, and you can't have really even without a gag, even if it's naklite amita, you can't have it higher than 10, aside from kilat chatanim that we spoke, which is not a set structure and also doesn't have a gag. That's how we have come out. Now the Gemara says you could have a kila that has 4 poles, has a real solid roof, and it is taller than 10 tefachim. And the Gemara says, how does that work? So says the Gemara, Keman, ki Rabbi Yehuda damar, lo ati ohel arai, u'mebatel ohel keva. This is a shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that a temporary dwelling, a temporary ohel, cannot affect you being in a more solid ohel above that. In other words, if you go get like a toy tent and you erect it in the middle of your living room, now you go into the tent. Now you're not in the house? Of course you're in the house. It's a Oil keva. The house is something solid, something permanent, and you're in just a little temporary, flimsy type of tent that does not take away from the fact that you're actually in the living room. You're still in the living room. So it says, Rav Yehuda, the same thing is with any oil keva. So here, if you have a sukkah, which is an oil keva, and then in it you have this like little canopy of a bed, that is considered ohel arai, and you are halachically still considered that you're under sukkah, the first kasher. Even if you have 4 poles, even if it's taller than 10 amot for the bed, still it's going to be kasher. That's the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. 10 tfachim, that's correct. So says the Gemara, Ditnan, this is a Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, nohagin hayu lishan tachat hamita bifnei hazakenim. This is a Mishnah we're going to have later on. That Rabbi Yehuda says again another story. Rabbi Yehuda, we mentioned before. Rabbi Yehuda always is very much into bringing proofs from the stories that happened. This is yet another example. It says we used to, when we were young, we used to go and sleep under the bed. Bifnei hazakenim, the older people were in the sukkah, so it was not respectful for the younger ones to be taking over the bed, so we would sleep under the bed. And they didn't say anything, of course. So therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, this is kasher. And that's a Mishnah. So we have this concept of Rabbi Yehuda already mentioned in the Mishnah. How is it possible for you to be under the bed and still kasher? Says Rabbi Yehuda, because of the same concept. The bed is an ohel arai, the sukkah is ohel keva, and an ohel arai does not nullify an ohel keva that's on top of it. And therefore you're still considered halakhically sleeping under the schach of the sukkah, you're kasher, it's good to go. So says the Gemara, if that's correct, just say halakha Rabbi Yehuda. It's a Mishnah already. Just tell me halakha Rabbi Yehuda. Why do you have to put the food around your head? So says the Gemara, Velema halakha Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara nicely mentions, I amar halakha Rabbi Yehuda, hava amina hanimidi mita. Telegabah hasuya. If the Gemara would only say halakha is like Rabbi Yehuda, I would not have known our case. Because remember, what's the case of Rabbi Yehuda? They would go under the bed. But last I checked, the bed is made only for the space on top of it, not for the space on the bottom. So I understand why the space on the bottom of the sukkah is not considered the ohel keva. It's not considered an important place. But if I would ask you, after reading the Mishnah, the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, what would be the halacha in the kila? When it's a canopy that's made for the space underneath it. The entire canopy is made to tent over your bed. So that's considered like an important chashuv. It's an important tent. So maybe that already is going to be considered something that nullifies the area of the sukkah, because now I'm in the canopy. I'm not in the sukkah. I don't care where I am above the canopy. I am in the canopy. Versus under the bed, that no one is going to say, I'm under the bed. It's not made for the hishtamshut, for the usage of the area beneath it. So therefore, says the Gemara, I would have thought maybe the canopy is going to be something that will nullify your presence in the sukkah, because you're after all in the canopy. Kamash Malan is coming to teach you that Rabbi Yehuda does not differentiate between under the bed or inside the canopy. Any time that it's ohel arai, he just knocks that off and you are really under the sukkah. So the canopy or the bed which you're underneath does not take away from you being in the sukkah. Fine, says the Gemara.
I thought the canopy is not an arai. I thought it's the four poles. I thought that's a keva.
So we spoke about, a very good question, we spoke about the kinofot versus kila, which one is more keva, which one is not arai, which was not keva, and the Gemara itself actually differentiated between the keva that you have by kinofot and the keva that you have by naklite hamita, right? So in comparison to this, is not considered keva. It is keva, which means it's made to be structured as a four poles and a canopy over the bed. It's not something that you just flimsily made before you fall asleep at night, but nevertheless, it's still an ohel arai, still considered something that is in comparison with the sukkah that's above it. It is ohel arai, so it's not considered that keva that would be taking away, says Rav Yehuda, from the fact that you are, after all, under the space of the schach of the sukkah. So says the Gemara, Kamash Malan, Tama Rabbi Yehuda de lo ati ohel arai umebatel ohel keva. The reason is that ohel arai does not take away from ohel keva, and therefore lo shena mita velo shena kila. Does not make a difference if it's your bed, that you're going under the bed, or you're going inside the canopy under the kila. So it says,
it's like our Tanakama though, not like Rabbi Yehuda.
yeah, of course, yeah. The halacha is not like this. So says the Mishnah now, starting a new Mishnah. Hidla alea et ha-gefen ve'et ha-dalat ve'et ha-kisus ve'sichech al kaba psula. We had this Mishnah before. We jumped to Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph a page ago to see this because it came up. So we're familiar with the fact that if you have a vine that you grew on top of the structure of your sukkah, and then you put some schach on top of it, that is pasul, right? Because the mixture of schach kasher and schach pasul. And we introduced, back then, we had not really learned this because it's our Mishnah that presents to us what is considered schach kasher and what is considered a schach that's not kasher. But we mentioned that for the schach to be kasher, it has to be detached from the ground. So therefore, if you have a vine that is crawling in the entire space of your schach, then even though that you put some kosher leaves on top as well, still is going to be pasul because it is attached to the ground. It's schach pasul. So you have a mixture of schach kasher and schach pasul. So now the Gemara says, the Mishnah says, but if you put a lot of schach, ve'im haya sichuch harbe mehen, if you have a lot of schach, osh ketzasan, or you just cut off the vine from its roots. You cut off, now it's not attached to the ground anymore. Then the Mishnah says kashra. By the way, the pictures that was sent to you on the chat has all of these. If you want to take a look at all of the cases and scenarios in this daf that we're going to be learning today, they're all available on the chat for those who are part of the Amud Yomi. So you could take a look what exactly it means. If you have lots and lots of schach and the vine is kind of like intertwined in the middle there, then it would be kasher. So says the Gemara, the rule of thumb is anything that is considered mekabel tumah, like a vessel, like a kli, or it's not gidulo min haaretz, or it's not something that grows from the ground, en mesachin bo. You cannot use it as a schach. V'chol davar she'eno mekabel tumah v'gidulo min haaretz, any other thing that grows from the ground and on top of it is not mekabel tumah, those two boxes you have to check, mesachin bo. You could use it as a schach. So obviously we mentioned that it can't be attached to the ground. So really is two, that's really three, right? It has to be growing from the ground, can't be mekabel tumah, and it has to be, of course, detached from its growth to the ground. So says the Gemara, Yativ Rabbi Yosef kabed Rav Huna, v'yativ v'kamar. Rabbi Yosef and Rav Huna, they were peers. They both learned by Shmuel and they both learned by Rav, right? Rav, again, as we mentioned before, Rav was senior to Shmuel by many years. When Rav passed away, many of his students became students of Shmuel afterwards. Again, we mentioned before, Rav Yehuda was the legendary student. Many times you have Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, and many times you have Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yosef and Rav Huna less so, but nevertheless, they're both students of that yeshiva as well. So now you have a story between them. Rav Yosef is coming to Rav Huna, and he starts saying a memra about our Mishnah. So he sits in front of Rav Huna, v'yati v'kamar, and he said, O sheketzasan kesheram, this that our Mishnah says that if you snip and cut away the vine from its attachment to the ground, and now your sukkah is kasher, ve'amar Rav sarich lenanea. Rav says that it is not kasher as it is. It's not. It's actually pasul. Because of a concept which basically our Amud today is going to be dedicated to this concept. And that concept is called ta'aseh velo min ha'asui. You have to, when you have to do an action of mitzvah, you can't automatically get it done without an action. It has to be actively done, not passively done. Examples. Well, examples is, perfect example is this case of the Gemara. You have a vine that grew on top of your structure of the schach, and it's pasul. And now I just snipped this out of the attachment that he has to the ground. So now it's considered schach kasher. No one disagrees with that. But is my sukkah kasher now? Well, I have to make chag sukkot taaseh. You have to make a schach. Did I make a schach? Well, I didn't touch the schach. I didn't. I just took away the reason that was making this invalid, and automatically, now the schach on top is kasher. So I didn't have a schach, and now I did something else, and all of a sudden I have a schach without even touching the schach. So that says Rav Yosef, we'll see this not to be so simple in just a moment, says Rav Yosef, this is ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Another example. The Torah says you have to write mezuzot, right? Mezuzah, you have to write on the mezuzot. So now imagine if I have a mezuzah, I go to the carpenter who's making my doors, right? I give him the mezuzah, I say put this on the doorpost nicely, professionally, make it match the door, paint them together, nice, beautiful, right? So he puts it on the doorpost, and then it delivers the doorpost to my house, it comes ready. Can you imagine? Awesome, right? Measured properly, perfectly painted. So I stick the doorpost into the wall. Is that kasher? Absolutely not. Why? Because ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. It wasn't the mezuzah that I stuck the mezuzah on it. It was not considered the doorpost of my house. And when it became the doorpost of my house, I didn't put a mezuzah. So therefore, it's considered invalidated, right? It actually could happen on a regular basis. You want to get a new washer and dryer, and it doesn't fit, or a fridge, and it doesn't fit through the door of your kitchen or your pantry, and you take the mezuzah off in order to fit. Usually they're 27 inches, whatever it is. It's exactly made to fit the door, and you pass it through. It doesn't pass, right? So what do? You take the door off of the hinges, and now it passes. It adds one thing, 1 inch added. So according to Rambam, a door post that doesn't have a door is a chayav b'mezuzah. You don't pass it like the Rambam, of course, but according to Rambam, now that I took the door off, it's like taking the doorpost off. And now I took my fridge, my washer dryer, whatever it is in, now I put the doorpost back on. It's like a minute thing. It's a very simple fix. According to Rambam, now your mezuzah is pasul. Why? Because it was a time that your mezuzah became invalidated, because the door was not chayav, and now it became chayav. It's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui, right? Or for people who do this actually was a question that someone asked. They were doing an addition to their house, to one of the rooms, so they took the whole ceiling, the whole roof of that room off to make the extension with a new roof, like a simple addition, right? A room that doesn't have a ceiling at all is a chayav b'mezuzah, right? And now the mezuzah was there the whole time. And now you have a new room with a new ceiling, and that will be considered something that needs a new mezuzah. You have to take the mezuzah off and put it back on for it not to be ta'aseh b'mezuzah. This is the concept that we're going to be dealing with in our Gemara right now.
Don't we say something that's attached to the floor is makabel tumah or no?
Something that's attached to the ground is normally not considered makabel tumah.
No.
Right? But we'll get to all the details of this in the unfolding sugya that we just started now. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Yosef said this in front of Rav Huna. Said, look, our Mishnah that says you snip this and it's good has a very important caveat that Rav said. Rav said you have to now pick up every piece of this wine and put it back on, because I'm creating, now the material is kasher for schach, but I have to actually make the schach, put the schach on. So I pick up every piece, put it back down, and you're good to go. Says Rav Huna. Rav Huna is one of the Gdolei HaAmoraim, by the way. You know, if you pay attention to the discussions of Rav Huna with everyone else, you will realize the tremendous kavod he's afforded by all of his peers. And Rav Huna over here very vehemently disagreed with it, but with a very nice language. So says Rav Huna, no, Hashmuel Amara, you're making a mistake, Rav Yosef. This was said not by Rav, but by Shmuel. Now, by the way, in parentheses, if you recall, we mentioned many times through our journey through Shas that Rabbi Yosef forgot his learning due to a sickness, and when he came back to his health, many times you find his peers or his students, many times his Abaye, his legendary student that is reminding him, says, you taught us like this, you taught us like that. So this may actually be a little bit connected to that. That would make it just much more meaningful. So it says this was not Rav, this was Shmuel. So here, Rabbi Yosef gets angry with him. Rabbi Yosef gets very unhappy. He says, wait a second. Ahderinu Rabbi Yosef la'apeh. Rabbi Yosef turned his face away. Rashi says, because he was unhappy with this. Ve'amar leh, and he tells back to Rav Huna, Atu mika amina lecha delo amar Shmuel. Did I say that Shmuel didn't say this? So maybe Shmuel also said it. I'm just saying that Rav said it. So maybe Rav said it and Shmuel said it. Amar Rav, amar Shmuel. Rav Huna very calmly says, no. You don't understand what I'm saying. Amar le Rav Huna achi kamina. What I'm saying is, the Shmuel amala v'lo Rav. It's only Shmuel. That's exactly what I meant. Rav does not, what you say in the name of Rav is incorrect. Rav does not hold like that. The Rav Achshuri Machshar. Rav, if you would ask Rav this question, Rav would tell you this is kasher. You have a vine on top of your schach, and you snip, you cut the thing. You have to do nothing more. It's kasher, as is. That's what I'm saying to you. And now the Gemara is going to go through a whole process of back and forth to deal with this. Ki had Rav Amram Chasida. There's a story with Rav Amram Chasida. Rama tichla le pruzma de inshi de bete. He put tzitziot on the garment of his wife. Now you're saying, wow, why he was so frum, right? Normally speaking, tzitzit is considered mitzvah aseh shazman grama. It is a positive time-bound mitzvah which nashim are pturot. But Rav Amram Chasida held that Laila is Zman Tzitzit. We darshin, Nimara in Masechet Berachot and in Masechet Berachot, that Uritem oto, that you have to see, it means it has to be a time that you could see with natural light and differentiate between Techelet, this. So therefore, it's only daytime, that you're chayav mitzvah tzitzit, the beged yom, but not beged laila, right? That's how we darshan, and that's the halacha. And that night is not zman tzitzit, right? Now there's machloket rishonim, right? Rosh and Rambam, whether it is dependent on the time or dependent on the type of garment. Is it beged yom or is it actually yom? Which without getting into the details of this machloket, but laila we say is not zman tzitzit. Now Rav Amram Chasida held that uritem oto has nothing to do with day or night. It has to do with a blind person. That a blind person is patur from tzitzit. He held. So therefore, his wife, who's not blind, is chayav because it's not mitzvah aseh shazman grama, it's mitzvah aseh shelo azman grama. So be that as it may, Rav Mata is making tzitzit for his wife. V'lo pasak rashei chutin shelahen, and he did not cut the ends of the fringes of tzitzit that was on the garment. In other words, instead of having 4 separate strings of tzitzit that you pass through the corner, and now when they fold, this will be 8 strings, he got 1 long string, and he just went back and forth with it before sticking it in the corner, right? Again, you have these pictures available that was sent yesterday to you. And he takes this attached 1 string that's now folded 4 times, and he put it through the corner, and he made the ties. He made the ties, and now he's like, wait a second, now is this kasher or not? Right? Is this taseh v'lo min ha'asui? Because as it is, when it's not detached, it's not 4 strings, it's only 1. So maybe that's not kasher, and now that I'm going to snip them, the ends, it's got to be taseh v'lo min ha'asui. this very problem that we just mentioned. Because now I am doing something else which makes my tzitzit kasher. I did not gedilim ta'aseh. It says you have to make the gedilim, you have to make the ties and the knots. I didn't do the knots and the ties when it was kasher. Right? When I did the knots and the ties, the whole thing was pasul. And now I just snip one thing and poof, everything becomes kasher. Maybe that's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. So Rav Amram Chasida went to ask this question. Says the Gemara, Ata lekamed de Rav Chia. He came to Rav Chia bar Ashi. Amar le Hachia amar Rav. And he told him, I know it's kasher. Because Rav said, mefaskan ven kesherin. You can snip the ends and the whole tzitzit is kasher. Hazaku baruch. Alma, psikatan zoya siatan. You see that the cutting is the doing. Now, this is very important sentence we just read. The cutting is the doing. Psikatan zu asiatan. Rabotai, I need your attention for just a second. According to Rashi and everyone else, it's not that Rav is disagreeing with the concept of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui, chas v'shalom. Everyone agrees ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Everyone agrees. Rav and Shmuel are disagreeing what is considered ta'aseh. Rav says the fact that I am snipping and making this nice the way it should be, I'm doing something to the tzitzit. So that's how I'm making it kasher. I'm doing it. And Shmuel says that's not doing. It says gedilim ta'aseh. It has to be that when you make the knots and the ties, that is already on a tzitzit that's kasher. So therefore, snipping the ends at the end does not help you anything. It's not that they're disagreeing conceptually on ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. It is that they're disagreeing what is the minimum requirement of ta'aseh. What is considered doing? Fine. But says the Gemara, well, you see from Rabbi Aram Chasida's story, that cutting is considered doing. So here also, cutting the vine that's going on your crawling on your sukkah, cutting it from its attachment to the ground is doing. Mamash, it's a good proof, right? Says the Gemara. Hachanami kesizatan zu asiyatan. Here also should be ketzizatan, you cut the vine from its attachment, and that's considered kasher. So therefore, recap, Rabbi Yosef said in front of Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, that even after you cut the vine, you have to pick up and put every piece of the vine on top of the sukkah. You have to pick them up and put them back down to take care of the ta'aseh v'lo. He says, no, that's not Rav, that's Shmuel. Because Rav would hold that that's kasher. And he proceeds to tell me a story that Rav Amram Chasida actually went and asked Rav Chia bar Ashi, and he told him in the name of Rav that by the case of tzitzit, you snip it and it's kasher. So says Rav Huna to Rav Yosef, here also, you snip it and it's kasher according to Rav. So what you're saying is factually incorrect. In the name of Rav, it's only Shmuel that holds it is going to be a problem. So then now the Gemara says, wait a second, V'savar Shmuel lo amrinan p'sikatan zu asiyatan. Shmuel disagrees with this. Shmuel also agrees with this, that p'sikatan zu asiyatan, that you could just snip the strings, the fringes, and your tzitzit is kasher. V'hatani Shmuel, we learned in the name of Shmuel. This is like happens to be like a gold mine, because you have actually Shmuel speaking about the case of tzitzit also. So Mar says, deal with this one. Amar Shmuel, Tani Shmuel mishum Rabbi Chia, hitil shne keranot bebat achat, ve'achar kach pasak shechutin shelahen kesherin. If you took one string, right? Now instead of folding it 4 times and making one tzitzit, you were even more efficient. So you made a long 4 folds, right? You folded it, and now you have 4 strings folded. And that's very long. So you stuck it into one corner, you took it out, and you stuck it into the second corner, and you took it out. So now you have enough fringes for 2 corners of a whole garment. And then you snipped the attachment. Kasher or pasul. and Shmuel said that that is kasher. So Shmuel also agrees with Rav that that's kasher. How do you say that Shmuel holds Ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui? And by the way, of course, the association of this is that Shmuel should also hold by Sukkah that if you snip the thing from attachment, the wine, it's going to be kasher. Gemara says, no. You got this whole case of Shmuel backwards. That's not what Shmuel is talking about. Isn't it talking about the case that you stuck them in the two corners and then you tied all the knots and ties and then you snipped it? The Gemara says, no, that's not the case. You snipped it and then you started tying the knots of the tzitzit. Wait a second. If you snipped it and then you tied, so what's the she'ela? What's the chidush? What is Shmuel even saying? Ma'u de tema, says Gemara, why remember? What's the chidush then? Ma'u de tema ba'inan knaf v'shat ptil. You would have thought that you need one single corner for every tzitzit that you are sticking in. It has to be one simple, because it says hakanaf ptil techelet, the pasuk says. I would have thought hakanaf means the corner, one corner. I can't put a series of strings into series of corners before they are kasher and ready to go. And therefore, I would have thought that if you put this folded thing inside the two corners and then you detach the attachment in the middle, that should be already pasul. And the Gemara says that's what Shmuel coming to tell you, that that's kasher, that's fine. But if you would start the knots and the ties of the tzitzit, that of course would be pasul according to Shmuel because of the pasul of ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. That's already not touched at all. Now the Gemara is going to go through the Shita of Rav, and we're going to end in few lines with two bomb kashas on the Shita of Rav, both on the Sugya of Tzitzit and also in the Sugya of Sukkah, which will result to a maskana in our Sugya of how to deal with the Sukkah that had a wine on top of it, which was detached from the ground later, which Bezat Hashem we will discuss in the days to come.